I covered Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, and I thought I'd finally cap off this trilogy. For certain, The Dark Knight received an enormous amount of praise, many comparisons 16 years later to this phenomenon. Good one, Warner Brothers.
And I thought my jokes were bad.
Batman Begins redefined the Batman name in a more grounded in reality to an extent, while The Dark Knight shaped the entire industry, being a crowning bar for what folks expect in a comic book film. A villain proving themselves being an exceptional smartass and a pain in the ass, especially for a hero to the brink of having to put his White Knight's crime under a lie to preserve chaos.
You can't give in!
Let's not forget the greatest performance within the genre as well. While Batman Begins and The Dark Knight have shaping purpose in the industry, The Dark Knight Rises seems to have been the punching bag over the years. As a film that's surprisingly well acclaimed by both audience and critics, time hasn't been a massive ally to this movie. Over the years, many revisit The Dark Knight Rises in an attempt to see if the film really holds up. Well, the likeness for the film is split 50-50. Sure, it's not the same level as The Dark Knight, but many still claim that the conclusion is vastly acceptable and appreciated as it ties up the trilogy very well. But if you were to say that this trilogy is perfect, there are those who would use this film as a whataboutism and start throwing darts as it breaks every decision in the writing, pointing out plot holes, plot contrivances, and the acting in a certain scene. I won't blame them on the last point. I've seen this film about 100 times since my first watch, and yeah, I started becoming massively disappointed throughout the years, as the complex work in Batman Begins and The Dark Knight wasn't present, if at all, in The Dark Knight Rises. So in an attempt to complete this trilogy, a rewatch was in order, and yeah, the film is great yet disappointing. Nostalgia could be a big factor, or the piss poor comic book films we've been getting out put The Dark Knight Rises in an entirely different light. It's nice seeing a high budgeted film feel like a lot of money was well spent, despite if many believe the narrative is discrepant. The film on a production level surpasses its time. Nolan had a very interesting approach when making this trilogy. Nolan focused on the here and now to make a well-made masterpiece.
We weren't going to make a second film as far as we knew. We were putting all our eggs in one basket. We said, no, we're just going to make this one movie and we're going to make it as good as it possibly could be.
So he never had the idea of making The Dark Knight when working on Batman Begins. Yeah, if Warner Brothers weren't happy with the return despite critical acclaim, Begins still feels like a completed ending. Even if The Dark Knight ends on a cliffhanger, it still feels finished, with a polished ending and a badass speech by Gordon ensuring why Bale's Batman characterization feels very special, as he's willing to endure a lie as he can't be the White Knight, but believes faith should be rewarded to those who deserve and more.
The Dark Knight.
An ending like that would make an excellent part 1 and 2, but this seemed like it was always going to be a trilogy at the end of the day. With The Dark Knight Rises being a mixed bag, the film has really great elements which makes many appreciate the approach of an epic war. Yet this very epic war has some very disappointing sections though.
Then you have my permission to die. What does that mean?
Rise.
It took 4 years to make this film, since Nolan wanted to make Inception in between, also trying to come up with an idea for the third installment. These factors certainly delayed and prolonged the release for The Dark Knight Rises. But it's actually very interesting how the idea to implement Bane in the League of Shadows storyline blended really well with the Dent act being a complete lie, since Dent went on a murder spree.
Beautiful.
With the unfortunate passing of Heath Ledger, years after The Dark Knight Rises, many speculated, was Joker ever planned to be in the film? Well, according to an interview with Aaron Eckhart and Heath's sisters, Joker was initially supposed to have some role in The Dark Knight Rises. Due to unfortunate circumstances, that never happened. And Nolan respectfully didn't want a CGI Joker escaping Blackgate, as he felt that would be extremely disrespectful to Heath's legacy, and instead scrapped all ties and mentions of the Joker, except for him being responsible for Harvey Dent's madness, and the truth coming forth spreading chaos in Gotham like he wanted. But I do love the neat salute in the end, when Batman's statue is revealed and is shaped as a smile similar to the Joker's. Rest in peace, Heath. Warner, realizing the film needed a villain to match or stay on the same level as the Joker from The Dark Knight, they pitched Nolan the Riddler. Famous from Batman's Rogues Gallery, who can possibly bring in many audiences to stack that fat cash on the table.
Where's the Italian?
And why not try casting Leonardo DiCaprio? Yeah, they requested Nolan to cast a man from Wolf of Wall Street as the Riddler, but being oddly too similar to who Joker was, Nolan turned to the brew who broke Batman's back from Nightfall, a physically imposing figure who can match Batman's hand-to-hand combat. The story was finished with the help of Christopher Nolan's brother John Nolan writing the first draft and David Goyer assisting with the story. The Dark Knight Rises became an epic cinematic war story filled with conflicting ideologies, revenge, and themes which have overlaid throughout the entire trilogy. Each film in the trilogy had an identity. Batman Begins tackled theatrics, a more brutal, haunted Gotham, with flowers that give you hallucinations, fear gas showing your biggest fear. The Dark Knight felt more corporate, with the Gotham resembling Chicago, diminishing Gotham having a character in a way, but the characters themselves overshadowed this creative approach, as modernization and simple city block play well hand in hand, focusing on rules, corruption, and morals. A crime drama. Nolan feared making a third one, as a lot of trilogies tend to fall off from its predecessors. Not entirely horrible, but missing marks which made the other two films special. The Dark Knight Rises, while still having the same Gotham, feels more grander in production and setting. Less of the villain having jurisdiction, but a massive organization ready to blow an entire city after it's faced a time of hope.
There's a reason why this prison is the worst hell on earth. Hope.
The Batwing chase, the Bleach chase, the climbing of the pit, the cinematography, more practical stunts. Everything feels bigger, which certainly doesn't strip you from the positive experience no matter how one feels of the execution narratively speaking. Film looks better than most nowadays.
I'm here to fulfill Ra's al Ghul's destiny.
How does one top the likeness and the amount of aura Joker had in The Dark Knight? Well, you don't. You create an entirely different entity who was just as imposing as striking but in a different light. Ra's embodied order in the form of drastic tactics, resulting in a full-blown massacre sometimes, on a corrupted city if necessary.
Every time a civilization reaches the pinnacle of its decadence, we return to restore the balance.
Bruce believed the complete opposite, willing to fight the criminals while believing his city can transcend from the hellhole corruption has led it to be. Joker in The Dark Knight loves the mental warfare with Batman, questions his no-kill rule, and forces Batman in situations where, yeah, the best scenario is for this madman to die. Joker wants to expose and upset the established order, as in his eyes it's all big joke. I love how the Joker pain is merely not him just painting himself to hide his face, but in a way to mock the folks he's trying to fool instead of really covering up his scars.
Could you please just give me a minute?
While Batman wants to be a symbol of hope and redemption while shadowing those who oppose the good nature of Gotham. Both are freaks fighting for vast different ideals. Harvey's the middleman for the two. He was Joker's shining example and an ace in the hole, that no one can stay good forever when chips are down, in which he succeeded, as he made Batman turn himself into the murderous villain to keep Elias as saving grace for Gotham. Joker just outplayed his pieces through turning the most vulnerable into his own level, to simply embrace chaos and anarchy. The Dark Knight Rises, Nolan's hunger for a contrasting villain from the Joker and Ra's, proceeded to give us Bane, whose every step overshadows Batman's lack of fighting during his peacetime. Casting Tom Hardy, who was really committed to the role, gained 30 pounds, walking with 3-inch lifts, with no one's surprise of having a memorable performance and iconic lines and demeanors putting a different spin on the character. Risen from darkness, lived a life of no privilege to back himself into like Batman, as Alfred put it in an intimidating statement.
And any man who is too extreme for Ra's al Ghul is not to be trifled with.
With Bane having a motive to fulfill Raz's destiny, leaving Bruce with the consequences of burning a house not only left scars on his mentor but even a man just as dangerous as him, seeking revenge and fulfilling his mentor's dream in a suicide mission, proving points at face value that there can never be true despair without the light of hope. Or how Batman took about living off a lie has defeated him on every account, being overmatched, outsmarted, and so eager and ignorant to get back out there, without prepping himself for the worst. Tom Hardy's calmness, even the most damning situations, he immediately brushes it off, and takes out incapable assets who prove to be unfit to go further.
No, he's alone.
Oh, even the facial expressions Tom Hardy displays are some of the best forms of mime acting, with his eyes to tell us the feeling Bane is going through. Confronting the CIA, he seems more commanding and knows he has the edge and is confident in his plan. The sewer fight gives a lot of look of disappointment, seeing one of Raz's best students fallen so far.
Belong to me.
or the infight. Already shocked to see Bruce finding the means to escape by embracing fear, a nice detail of irony in the writing as when Bruce takes out the vulnerable part of Bane, Tom Hardy vents the pain and rage, going berserk and falling into his own words, fighting like a younger man with nothing held back. Bane carried this film on his own feet despite his plan conceding with stupid decision making, which could have been avoided if the characters didn't have to be blatantly assassinated to one brain cell. The CIA allowing Bane's men to ride with the same aircraft as Dr. Pavel when them themselves have been personally trying to pursue the doctor, and given they're aware of who Bane is, they carelessly interrogate the man, allowing Bane to retrieve Pavel. And let's not get started how fast he was able to find a vein and perform a blood transfer, or Gordon holding a letter which can shape the future of Gotham upside down and fall into the wrong hands. And we'll picture Gordon shocked because his careless effort to conceal the letter falls back as all of Harvey's inmates get released. Or the ill decision to send every officer under the tunnel. No backup available in case things went south, and strike two it did. Despite the plan conveniently falling in place, which would have been avoided had rational thinking was available during those scenes, Bane alone still carried the film due to the performance and characterization being the polar opposite to Batman. All until that very moment. Talia's reveal, the most controversial yet understandable criticism given how much the film emphasized and built up Bane as the formidable foe and clever backstory mirroring Bruce's, just a vast different context. As for Talia, not enough emphasis was provided on her character, nor guaranteed interesting character qualities, besides a question how the hell she got a scar. The film provides us with the explanation Bane was a fall guy, she was brains of the organization. Imagine Bane finding out his mentor's home was blown to bits and gather survivors to uphold a revolution in a plan for Gotham's reckoning. Given how much this film focused on building this entity who can equally match Bruce at every level of the playing field, the film swaps for Talia, whose motivation isn't carefully explained nor makes sense given how she despised her father's actions towards Bane and immediately brought the plan to light and now wants to fulfill her father's wishes. Talia in the comics had a more conflicting personality with reasoning behind her love for Bruce, but in the realm of her father's teachings she couldn't go against him, despite knowing how wrong he was. The Dark Knight Rises just simply made her character into a genocidal maniac, and simply threw Bane like he was nothing burger, diminishing his complexity and mystery in the film so greatly built up as a result of this bold decision. Bane went out with a sad whimper. And yeah, this death should have never made it into the editing room.
Hero can be anyone, even a man doing something as simple and reassuring as putting a coat around a young boy's shoulders to let him know the world hadn't ended.
As for another character who didn't take the butt end of a loose cannon writing near the end, Batman. I gained a better grasp of Batman's story, the intended conclusion no one was waiting for the more I rewatched this film. Bruce is a completely dreaded and broken character. The years of fighting the mob and crime has finally caught up to him physically. He is mentally distraught. However, he was never able to move on beyond the cape, knowing Rachel chose him over Dent. But given the circumstances of being blown up, he has to live on knowing she supposedly said yes but died. I gathered the impression he completely quit being Batman, contradicting the words Alfred shared of being able to endure the consequences of the right choice. In question, bringing about a lie to cover crimes of Harvey Dent in favor for Gotham's purity. I was wrong. The writing hints he only temporarily set aside his cape in case a Joker, the mob, or Ra's level threat arrived in Gotham. He'd need to don the cape once more. More evidence can be showed when Blake confronts Gordon on the mysterious disappearance of a cop. He states how much the trio worked their asses off to clean up the streets. As he added further,
pretty soon we'll be chasing down overdue library books.
There is no need for Batman to stop the ordinary crime as the cops have been well equipped to handle the average burglar, but it also seems they've been enjoying their peacetime, as Bruce looks above seeing the lie working for 8 years long. Batman wants to don the cape and cowl. Even Alfred points out the obvious.
But you're not living, you're just waiting, hoping for things to go bad again.
Nolan certainly made Bruce more human than the other iterations of Batman, and more emotionally bent given how much Rachel meant to his journey. Many dogged Nolan for how basic Rachel was, and yeah, to an extent she could have done more personally for her own character growth. But she is still as important for Bruce, from slapping him into realization to having him almost give the cowl up for a future with her, to now him being really in the deep, given her impact in his life no longer exists, since she got blown up like hell. She may have not had the most complex writing, but her importance in the story is also undeniable.
I did find someone
I know, and you lost them, but that's all part of living, sir.
Bane becomes Batman's excuse to don the cowl no matter how many heated warnings from Alfred that he isn't who he was 8 years ago.
Oh, your money!
The hit on the stock exchange was meant to drive Bruce into bankruptcy. Curveballs are just being thrown, and find this a proper way to deconstruct your character without ruining what's been created. Nolan made it clear how much he worries for third films living to the height of previous two. Rarely do you see a steadily enjoyable roller coaster of a trilogy with a clear, concise ending. All that falls into usually how your main character ends up being portrayed. You can have a background of poor writing decisions, or an atmosphere not as live as the predecessors, but if you can have a clash of two great upstanding characters, it can really carry your film. Return of the Jedi is a great example, not as sharp-witted as Empire Strikes Back, nor as powerful of a final battle as A New Hope. The dynamic between Luke and Vader and emotional depth which weighs scenes carries this movie.
You were right about me.
Bane finding the flaws in Batman's decisions to hide out and latching on to the hope of a threat to bring him back became his despair within the pit, as his city falls under pressure of collapsing as he finds the means to escape. Pit is merely a symbol of Bruce finding fear again, embracing his fears as a weapon to move forward. He deems the escape attempts to be easy, and believes he simply needs to be physically capable. A great shot defining this sentiment when Ross proves immortality exists through memories and hallucinations. Takes major jabs at Bruce, which is immediately cut to him training physically, having not learned the true meaning of how to move forward. And falls to square one once again. The prison doctor who only had like 2 lines, those lines play a massive role. Just needed that sequence to really show why it's so brilliant. Bruce learning why falling is important. It gives us the nature to learn how to pick ourselves up and learn to fight that same fate over and over. Climbing without the rope, Bruce figured the true meaning of fear and how much of a powerful weapon it is.
That fear will find you again.
No.
Glossing over the question of how he arrived to Gotham provides hope to police officers who were chasing him for 8 years, and confronts Bane in the light, a symbol he has risen from hell. It's not Batman who is saving the city, it's now Bruce Wayne.
No. I came back to stop you.
Probably could have picked a better line. Nolan fine wrapping the battle between Bane and Batman on a nice bow targeting the mask, with Bane now fighting the way Batman was in the sewer, costing his fight. This rewatch certainly gave me personally a better idea on what Nolan intended for Batman. Sure, some folks still believed in him like the kid orphanage, but constantly going around stopping criminals getting chased would have certainly bat an eye toward the question if he really did kill Harvey, given how beloved he was, as Joker called him, the White Knight of Gotham. Some may still have criticisms for the lack of Batman in this film, and sure, there's valid reasons to uphold those criticisms, but this story has always been about Bruce juggling his real-life persona in the form of his fear since childhood, while keeping those close safe and sound, how he combats his personal life steeping away ever so slightly the more he goes out at night. The Dark Knight Rises Bruce fits the real life world of emotions, and how even the one with the strongest will have their own doubts at times. Nolan really explored Bruce further as what's next when all the mobs and formidable threats are no longer strolling around Gotham, when his only gateway to life beyond the cowl no longer is waiting for him, to the point he's simply waiting the only life he really knew. How does that affect those around him? A very neat direction that was executed perfectly, brick by brick.
No one's ever gonna know who saved an entire city.
They know.
It was the Batman.
From loving the film to hating to now really appreciating what Nolan has created. Just like Batman in this film, I went through like 4 arcs myself. The film was so close to being a perfect conclusion to the story for Bruce Wayne. Unfortunately, The Dark Knight Rises is still the weakest amongst the trilogy. Batman Begins shined off its origin, juggling Bruce's character with Batman, creating a difference in tones, and Bale executing the 2 personalities very well. As a rip from the comic, Batman Begins succeeded well beyond those lines, as a master being in realism with the respect to the atmosphere in Gotham. The city had a lot of character, the people within this hell had a lot of character.
Nice coat.
Oh, and the Batman was top notch. Wasn't throat cancer, but a balance between a growl and a normal voice.
Swear to me!
The Dark Knight, though a step down with its Gotham, the corporate nature plays well into the work Batman and Dent have been doing with the city, taking down the mob, and this is the result of it. Despite the character of Gotham, The Dark Knight succeeds in all 90% aspects from Batman Begins, and while the biggest applause was creating an iconic villain with Heath Ledger's Joker,
Why so serious?
who masked himself as a clown to mock and manipulate the real clowns of the city in his eyes. However, with The Dark Knight Rises, it's exceptionally great as it handles a lot of new characters very well, in the form of 2 minor redemption arcs and a cop who sees the injustice within the very force he respected. Although disappointed with how much Alfred was in the film, but his role is significant, as Bruce's drive for a double life hurts even the most important person in his life. He burnt the letter to spare Bruce's pain, as he sacrificed already so much in The Dark Knight, but seeing the result and how he has not moved on from Rachel, he feels hurt to see the boy he raised lunging to a life that he no longer needs. The nail in the coffin for Alfred leaving was Bruce's arrogance towards Bane, seeing him as just another student of Ra's. Alfred is well aware Bruce isn't physically ready, and it's merely a suicide mission for him to confront Bane at the state he is in. He slaps Bruce with reality like it was a glass bottle shattering on his head, and it's time he moved on from being a vigilant and find a peaceful life, a life without Rachel. He leaves because he doesn't want to bury another member of the family he deeply loved and cared for. People criticize this scene for Alfred leaving him at a pivotal time in his life of depression, but when you put yourself in the shoes of Alfred, who considers Bruce as his own son, who doesn't even listen out of determination to enter a life that has passed him, a life that will certainly get him killed, but even that doesn't stop him, and instead he lets Alfred go for using Rachel as a way of healing Bruce. So he sees his last option to leave him and make him understand how much Bruce has impacted those close to him. He simply doesn't want to bury a man he cared for.
Since I first heard his cries, echo.
All this development for 2 hours and 40 minutes, well, mostly.
Of course.
Tom Hardy as Bane, which was undervalued due to his size, provides a memorable performance in the comic book industry, despite having compelling writing in the beginning to being immediately shafted near the end. A controversial idea to deconstruct Bruce was clearly blown out of proportion, as the deconstruction is an event to something new for him that he must face and overcome. The Pit, although much more context to the management and how it's run and the world building would have added character to the very line held from an ancient part of the world, Bruce must learn to embrace fear to move forward. Just like why he became Batman, to avoid a child like him facing a life he had of losing those close to you.
He's a silent guardian, a watchful protector.
So many well-created story beats that, yeah, it's also disappointing how much the other beats don't hit in tune for the potential this film could have had, if more thought was put into the absolute bonehead decisions characters make to string Bane's plan along, or of certain reveals diminishing a well-crafted villain for a character with no substance or creative backstory, which we all believed was bestowed on Bane. Talia didn't need to be in this film, and she could have been removed for more Catwoman's backstory, delving in her lifestyle and seeing her arc feel more fleshed out in a close to 3-hour runtime.
There's more to you than that.
But despite being also disappointed, the Dark Knight trilogy still holds up very well, and as for The Dark Knight Rises, it was an almost perfect ending.